organizations, community movement builders out of Pittsburgh, Blue and Green Consulting, which is in Asheville Heights, and then with the Connect here in Westview, the Center for Civic Innovation that does work across neighborhoods in Atlanta. We all got together and we said, not only do we want to make sure that our folks know how important and vital it is for their voices and needs to be included in this election, but that we're not going anywhere. And this is thanks to the leadership of folks like Yomi, who said, the only way we're going to do this is if we keep doing it right afterward. We're going to hold all the words that people say to account, the actions that they say they're going to take, we're going to watch, and we're going to make sure that this election is not just a fun party, but instead it is a referendum on the leadership that we have today. So we are excited to be here, not just in community, but also as folks who are committed to holding power to account at a time where we need it more than ever. So if you want to learn more about this work, you can go to voteatl.org. You can learn more about the effort, but you can also learn more about what in the world does the mayor do or don't do. What in the world does city council do? What in the world is it that school board does? We want to make sure that people are not just talking on platitudes, and just using platforms to say buzzwords, but they actually know how to do the job. Because talk is cheap. We want to see our needs reflected in the policies that are there in our city. So really excited to be kicking off this conversation today. A few things that I wanted to say. First of all, if you are a candidate, could you please stand for me if you're able? Please stand. Oh, it's Pete, right? Because in general, I was going to say, well, you know, you're doing our two, so it's all relevant. Look, the reason why I wanted these folks to stand is because tonight is not meant to be an easy conversation, but we have to start ourselves grounded in the humanity of the people who have decided to not only put their own well-being at risk to run for public office, but their families are affected by this, their friends are affected by this. I know it's easy to throw shots at folks because that's what we do in politics sometimes, but these folks carry that stuff home with them. And I know it because I got some calls from candidates yesterday after I moderated last night. So I think that at the end of the day, our job is to have open, honest conversations, but to ground ourselves in gratitude and humanity, that the fact that there are folks who are willing to put themselves on the line to be able to represent these communities. And I will say, not a single incumbent for city council has shown up. That includes tonight. So I want you to not just note the folks who have shown up, but I want you to take notes of the folks who continue not to show up. That matters just as much. That sends just as much of a signal. So thank you for showing up. Well, a lot of folks would want to be here. Not everybody is able to be here. It is a privilege for a lot of us to be able to come into a room like this together. There are a lot of folks who will be watching from home. Actually, every bar in Atlanta is streaming this right now. It's amazing. You know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are watching this now. So, but that should be the goal. We want to get this in front of as many people as possible. So, while there are not, you know, necessarily every chair filled in the room here today, that does not mean that this message is going to stop here. Because the way that this message actually works is if you go and you talk to 20 other folks, and you post this video, and we're going to make sure we put it out there in the world as well. So if you know someone who needs to be watching this, you can send them to facebook.com/civicatlanta, facebook.com/civicatlanta. You can also have them, if they register right now for the event, they'll get a Zoom link. So we're happy to toss that around. If you're like, I don't know how to do this Zoom thing, or like whatever it is, we got a bunch of technical folks over there in the back. Go ahead, there's someone who will help you make sure you get connected or get you the link to make sure your friends and family can see this at home. But COVID is alive and well, and that is something that we are not going to ignore. There are some candidates. We had a candidate who actually contracted COVID. You know, Tamara Jones was not able to be here, did let us know. So for any candidates that did let us know that they couldn't be here, we appreciate you letting us know. For those of you who ghosted us, we will remember that. Couple other things, you got scorecards. So you got scorecards on your seats. You're going to have the ability, if you don't have one, if you can raise your hand, we'll get some folks to get you one. We got a young lady up front who needs one. We got some over here. We'll get y'all some scorecards. Look, I know y'all are already judging in your heads, so now you get to be judging on paper too. So this is an opportunity for you to write down notes, comments. We'll get you one. Just keep your hand up if you don't mind. This is going to be an opportunity for you to put some notes down, for you to put a score if you'd like and drop it off at the back. We are going to share those, just to get a pulse on what people are thinking. So again, we'll have some volunteers and we'll come around and get you one of those before the end of the night. So no worries there. So I'm about to tell you right now. Yes. So once you have a scorecard, what you'll see is there are sections in there. We want you to write a score of 1 to 5. 1 is not feeling it. I don't think they know it. Not qualified. 5 is excellent, awesome, doing great, all of that. If you have someone sitting next to you, you can partner up on a scorecard. Keep your hands raised. We've got scorecards on scorecards on scorecards coming. Keep your hand raised. We'll give it a second. And if we have an extra pen as well up front, that would be great. All right. So look, as we get started today, we'll make sure we get some extra copies. I think we're just working that out. So don't worry about the scorecard. We'll get you good. All right, perfect. You can write some scores on your friend's paper, write it on your hand, tattoo it, whatever you need to do. Feel free to write it on here. We'll make sure you get a copy before you leave as well. So thank you for folks.
And one thing, the nature of all the scorecards are up to campus and did RSVP club that actually did show up today. So if you don't see your name on there, when you get up onto the stage, you will announce that and then make sure you write those in the score. I think I'm the scorecard.
Okay, yeah, scorecard here. If you're a candidate, please give up your scorecard. That's weird. But I get it. Thank you, Jason, for exemplary behavior there. Good. Anyone else? Okay. All right, look, we got to get into the crux tonight. I'm excited to get started. This room, it echoes a lot. So what we ask is that you keep conversations to a minimum over here. You need to take a conversation outside, no worries. But we want to make sure that candidates can hear the questions and all of that. But the last thing I want to be able to do here today is I want to recognize the space that we're in. Before I talk about the space and the incredible people that we are hosted by today, we have a short video. So we're going to have a video that is being played by the Connect. You'll get to check that out. And then right after that, I'll tell you a little more about the Connect and introduce the mastermind behind it. And then we can get rocking and rolling. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Amazing. I'm so excited to be here. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and kick off that video.
The Connect Cooperative, a grassroots, community-led, wealth-building movement in the historic community of Southwest Virginia. Really from the heartbreak of these nations of their families and founders, Keon Roberts and Marcus Watch. Our collective work is to bring power to our community by disrupting the capitalistic and racial economic disparities of commercial real estate by creating our own economic empowerment ecosystem rooted in shared democracy beliefs. The reason why I come out and support the Connect exactly that. The Connect the community to the resources and the people that they need to help them be successful. How to play for businesses to come and learn and have faith where they might not otherwise have it, and be here and faith with other businesses to learn and thrive together. It's a beautiful thing, and we're so lucky for that. That cooperative is where you can find a hyper-local community of legacy Black businesses, creators, micro startups, and solopreneurs. where global ideas are not only explored in theory, but developed and invested into by the very community in which they live. Highlights include our community co-working space, with shared retail inventory, 4 Grounds Community Control Cooperative, and our wraparound holistic small business support. Although Atlanta's Black population is 51%, our community is managed in the wake of gentrification and displacement. The aftermath of COVID-19 is Black-owned businesses twice the rate of White counterparts. Statistics show that 41% of Black-owned businesses Atlanta is ranked number 1 in the nation for racial income disparities. The average value of a Black-owned business is $68,000, while the average value of a white-owned business is $650,000. Community-driven solutions led by Black folks on the ground and backed with economic preparedness support is the only way to shift the needle against the harmful effects of racial economic disparities. The connect is how we do things.
The voice you heard behind that video is one of the co-founders of the Connect. He's going to give us a little bit of information about this space that you haven't heard in that video. I just formally welcome you to this space, and then we will get this party started. I'll kick us off right after that. All right, Keone Rollins, please.
Together, even with the mask on, we did the little elbow fist pump hug. So I just want to say thank you all for coming out. A lot of you all have put your love and sweat equity in this space. So we say that the Connect is ours. What you're sitting in right now, the next time you come back, hopefully those 3 spaces will actually house 3 legacy Black-owned businesses that we're doing in the spirit of what's called a solidarity economy, which means they will have below market rates, technical assistance and support for their business to thrive. Those spaces over there, which is called our creation stations, we will have students that will actually be able to come and access our Wi-Fi. When Ms. Imogene needs help with her homestead exemption application, Lewis will be able to reserve that space and talk to Ms. Imogene very privately about what she needs. Also, if there's a small business or solopreneur that wants to reserve that space to do their podcast, photo shoots, things of that nature, Mark and the team is actually going to have a rolling 8-week park for them to be able to exist in the space. Where this lush Black carpet is where community will come sit in this community controlled co-working space. Behind me will be 4 Grounds, which will actually be our community controlled coffee space. We will believe for 4 Grounds that we will be doing that in the space of mutual aid for the redistribution of wealth. What that means is we'll actually give the opportunity for the community to have ownership in 4 Grounds, as well as every 90 days we'll actually take a percentage of our proceeds. And if when Kayla calls us up and says that her mom is having some issues with code enforcement or citations, we will actually take a portion of our proceeds to be able to pay off that citation and code enforcement. So that is a part of our anti-displacement strategy. So when we talk about our own cooperative economic ecosystem, we're living that in real time and in real life. So the importance of having these candid conversations right here. Westview, all of us are doing this change and this movement building right here in our community. We want you as candidates that are going to be in position to do the same thing. And we'll be holding you accountable. So what we did when Rohit called and Nedra called, I was TIB from Oldsoft, Warren, and that other man out of office. So when they first called about this whole ATL stuff, I was mad about it. Like, I'm tired, TIB, I'm not doing this, right? But then Nedra, right there, with that cute little smile, called again. And so what I said was, the only way that I would allow our community to be extracted from, right? Because all last year is what we did, is if we have some accountability. So one of the things that we did was, Michaela, other artists, got together, we took the words from our community survey, and on the outside, there's our garden box that's out there, and those are actually the words from the community. In addition to that garden box, we'll bring Michaela up in a second, we committed to having that accountability the first 6 months. So candidates who are here, can you raise your hand? Raise your hand, raise your hand. So when you all get into office, you will see my face, you will see Rohit's face, Grace, Nedra, and the whole team, because we want to hold your words, we want to have some accountability, right? So when you stand in here, you get that cute photo op and that real cute selfie, right? Because I know y'all just upgraded to that iPhone 13 Pro Max, right? So when you do that, we want to make sure that we are getting restored to the community, right? We want to make sure that those words mean something beyond the ballot box. Even for our community members who choose not to vote, there's still some accountability. Those words are still encouraged. So we truly do believe in that there is a way to reimagine the community, because guess what? We're living the reimagining of this space in real time right here in Westview. So, I'm going to bring up Michaela.
I'm just really grateful. I really need to get started, but I'm really grateful to be able to work on the art of engagement. We had 2 workshops. One workshop where we helped, we had a mixed media collage creativity. I'm a visual artist. I'm also an art teacher, so art teacher style. I had some of the members of the community come in. We created some collages, but they also, more importantly, had words on them about what the concerns were. We had a great discussion. And then I humbly took Keomi's beautiful, brilliant idea and made it come to life by putting the images and the words and then other words and images that also represent our area on the flower box. So it's just another way, a visual creative way to help keep people accountable. So that is it. I am so grateful to be here and I'm ready to get started.
Before we wrap, Jimmy, if we could have you just come back up real quick. So look, a lot of times we talk about the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into this work, and we don't talk about the people who are behind it as much. They don't want the credit, they don't take the credit, and often those folks in Atlanta are Black women. And so what we wanted to do is, Gilby just also took another trip around the sun just recently. On behalf of the community, we got you some solid global flowers. Wanted to thank you for how you do it and the way that you show up. Just thank you for everything you do for this community, and you have made every single person better than the work that you do. So thank you. So just grateful to the Connect for showing what community looks like, how it's practiced, and that is what the spirit of what we are in for tonight. We have an incredible moderator for you who's going to be talking to the candidates. I've been asked to do a little bit of introduction to the candidates that I will start with. So I'm going to welcome up the candidates to join us on stage, and then I will introduce our moderator, and we will get rocking and rolling. We're going to start with the school board. We have about 30 minutes or so that we'll be engaging with school board candidates. And then after that, we will have an additional conversation with council candidates as well. Sound good? All right. Okay, so I get to bring up some of these folks. So we have 3 folks who are running for District 9 at large, which would include Westview and Pittsburgh neighborhood. We have Mr. Jason Estevez, Jason Allen, and Jadaris James. If I can have the 3 of y'all join us up here on stage. Y'all can give them a round of applause. And I believe for the evening, those are our only school board candidates that are joining for today. So if y'all want to get closer to here, that'd be good. Or if y'all want to spread out to put your feet up. We're going to be joined by them. So I want to for us to be able to get started with this conversation. Yo, Betty. All right. That's so great. All right. To get started, what's really important is that we ground ourselves in the community that we are in, but also in the role and the job that these folks will be playing. So I'll set that tone, and our moderator will come up and be able to ask a few other questions. The first thing that I wanted to make sure that we are able to do is to make sure that y'all are prepared and ready for the job that is required here. And in Westview, this is a community of thousands of folks. It has been a majority black neighborhood. I would like you to tell us what is what percentage of this neighborhood, if you use your blackboard, sorry, let's forget, we're in Atlanta, we use blackboards here. So if you could get your blue blackboard with white chalk, and if you could tell us what the percentage black population is in Westview today, we'll give you a little margin there, but what is, I can tell you it has decreased. What is it today, Westview? All right, starting. Okay, let's see. You said 47%, 85%, 43%. So in Westview, this is a 88.8% black neighborhood. It's an 88.8% black neighborhood. Now, this is important because when I don't want us using words like minority here, I don't want us using words like marginalized here, because at the end of the day, this is still a majority black neighborhood. So a lot of our conversations will be centered around blackness because this is the majority black neighborhood. So we're not going to talk about necessarily all of Atlanta here in Westview. We're going to be talking a lot about the community that we're in. So the next question that I have is, want y'all to be able to write down, sorry, did we not give you all napkins or wipes? You can write down, you all right? Okay. I want to talk about the role that people are going to be playing when they are on the school board. So the first role that they are going to be playing is that they are going to have to hire, retain, or in some cases remove the superintendent of the actual school system. I'm going to ask the audience, if you are working on a campaign, please do not answer because we're giving away t-shirts. So if you are someone who takes that, I will take that as a bribe and I will call you out for it. If you could tell us, if you are not running for office, what the name of the superintendent of the Atlanta Public School System is. If you could raise your hand. Anyone know the name of the Atlanta Public School System superintendent? This is the person taking care of your kids. Anyone know? That's not a candidate or works on a campaign. No one knows. No one knows. Okay, we'll say it on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Lisa Herring. All right, Dr. Lisa Herring. Remember that name. That's important. It's a very important name. So candidates, I would like you to give Dr. Lisa Herring a score of her. She's been in office for about a year or 2 years now. 2 years. A year and some change. I want you to give her a score of how well she has responded to COVID. How well she has responded to COVID in the public school system. If you could just give her a score. Responding to the needs of our kids during this time as a superintendent. Okay, so we'll take a look at it. Did you give her an 8? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. If we could do A through F with no E, that'd be good. A minus and B minus. Okay, I'll let the moderator extrapolate on that if they feel like doing that. But one thing you want to think about is this is something that the school board is going to have to do all the time. They're going to have to figure out how well they think that superintendent is doing. And there are some candidates up here who will tell you that sometimes you got to remove a superintendent. Sometimes you don't remove a superintendent. Sometimes you got to retain your superintendent. So that is the first part of their job. Got that? I want y'all to be clear on what these folks do so you don't start asking them about stuff they're not responsible for, right? All right. Second thing, the budget of the school board is entirely separate from the city of Atlanta. It is entirely separate from the city of Atlanta. The budget of the school board is entirely separate from the city of Atlanta. This is important because that means the city of Atlanta does not make decisions about our schools. And our school folks don't make decisions necessarily about what the city council and our mayor is. So I don't want y'all asking mayoral candidates about our schools. These are the folks you need to be asking about our schools. But one major responsibility for the school board is to manage the school's budget. And I know for some of y'all this might be remedial, but know that most people don't know this information. So my next question for you is, what is the size of the school board's budget? And how much of that is the general fund? What is the size of the school board's budget? And how much of that is the general fund? Good. All right, let's see it. We'll give y'all a little bit of leniency on the answer because it has variances. 903 million, 900 million, and the total budget being 1.3 billion, 1.6 million, and the general fund 400,000. Okay. So the correct answer is that the entire budget is about 1.2, 1.3 million, right? And the fund itself, excuse me, I was not stuck in an elevator with Beyonce recently, so I forgot that word. Yes, $1.3 billion, $1.3 billion, and 903 million of that is in this general fund where they get to decide where this money is going to go and where it's not. Of that, where does the majority of the money go, candidates? If you can write that, what's the majority expense? What's the majority expense? What do we spend the majority of our money on? Y'all didn't know you were coming back to school today, did you? So there you go. All right. Okay. Okay. What'd you write? You can say it. School. Well, yes, but staff and instruction and curriculum. So instruction is the right answer, right? So instruction is the right answer. We spend the vast majority of our money, right? If you look at this little chart over here, you look at this. 66% of the budget of that 900 million bucks is spent on instruction. Last question on the budget is, where does the majority of that money come from? Where does the majority of that money come from? Y'all see why this is important, right? Yeah. Y'all are elected folks who are going to take care of your money, right? So you want to make sure that they know where that money's coming from and they know where they're putting that money. That's very important. All right. Okay, right? Federal funds, property taxes, and taxpayers. So the answer is property taxes, okay? So the local taxes, 77% actually comes from local taxes. So the budget is made up majority of local taxes. And if you want to see what that breakdown looks at, you can look down below at the bottom of this sheet. You can see which taxes that comes from, where it comes from, etc. Okay? I got 2 more questions and then we're going to move on to the moderation for today. You all following me though, right? Yeah. Number 1, they're responsible for the superintendent, making sure that the superintendent is doing their job. Number 2, they are responsible for making sure that this budget is correct, that we're putting our money where we want our money to go, where it is important to go. Whether you agree or disagree where it's going, you need to have that conversation with them. The third thing that I want us to be able to talk about is when you are elected to this office, you are also going to have to join a committee. You're going to have to join a committee. So it's not like they just get to talk about everything together. They actually have to go and join a committee. There are 4, possibly 5, if there's a technicality, there's a sunsetting committee. There are 4 committees that are there. Can y'all name at least 3 of the 4 committees that are 3 of the 5? I'll give you the 5th if you want to put that 5th one down. Can you name the committees? And circle the one that you would want to be a part of. This is important. Because when these folks presume office, they don't just, not everybody gets involved in every aspect of it, right? They get don't know what they're talking about in that committee, it can be very difficult. for them to be able to do their job. So there are 4, technically 5 committees, and I want them to be able committees to be great. Okay, so let's see. The budget, equity, what's the last one? Accountability. Okay, the accountability, audit, budget, board development, and policy. Accountability, budget, audit, and board development. Yes. So y'all got a majority right. You got a majority right. So you can look on the sheet here as well. You can see these committees here. Accountability. So making sure that they're doing what they said they would do. Audit, checking our money, making sure the money's right. Or like making sure that what we said we were going to spend on, we're spending on. Budget, actually forecasting where this money's going to go moving forward. Policy review, so actual pieces of legislation and policy. And then board development, a lot of that is dealing with renaming some schools right now that's going on. Got it? Last thing, then I'm going to turn it over. Y'all follow me though, right? Who you elect is responsible for the superintendent. They're responsible for the budget. They're going to join a committee. And the 4th thing is sometimes they're going to introduce things during elections. They're going to introduce things and put things on the ballot. I'm being a little bit layperson with my terminology, so forgive me for those nerds who are thinking about what I'm saying right now. But they have the opportunity to put stuff on the ballot, to be able to tax folks, to be able to get money from different places and have you vote on. This year, there are 2 measures on the ballot that you will vote on. Whether you like it or not, it's one of those things at the end where you're like, yes, no, why did they write this thing like this? I don't understand. Like, there are going to be 2 questions on there that are going to affect your schools. What are those 2 measures that are on that ballot this year? Those 2 measures that are on the ballot this year. You can write those 2 things down. What are the 2 measures that are on the ballot this year? Y'all are going to vote on this. You vote yes, you vote no. It is going to affect your pocket. It is going to affect your pocket. Whether you like it or don't like it, it's going to affect your pocket. Whether everyone votes yes, or majority votes yes, or majority votes no. Feel me? That's very, very important. There are 2 things that you're going to be voting on. So all these names are going to be there, and then there are going to be questions. There are 2 questions that are going to affect the schools. All right, I'll give you 10 more seconds. Okay. Good. SPLOST and the 1-cent tax use. eSPLOST and homestead exemption. eSPLOST and homestead exemption. That's a correct answer from our 2 folks here. The eSPLOST, this is an education special tax, right? It is an education special tax. That means every time someone spends money on something in retail, that money is going to go to the school to be able to build buildings and capital type stuff, not toward instruction, but like capital type stuff. Whether we should tax everybody every time they spend money, right? The other is a homestead exemption, which we just talked about how important it is for people to be able to fill that out and to be able to access it. That is also on the ballot. Okay, so now I'm gonna quiz you. What's the first thing? No, what's up? Sorry, the first responsibility of the school board? Superintendent. Second responsibility of the school board? Budget. Third responsibility of the school board? Be on our committee. 4th responsibility of the school board? Yep, to take your money. That's right. No, to be able to introduce measures that are there. Look, y'all, this is not a comprehensive look at the school board. I want you to care about the values of these people. I happen to know a few of these folks really well. These are all good people that are on stage here, but I want us to challenge them and also hold them accountable for what they're supposed to do, not what they want to talk about. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our incredible moderator tonight. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce Melvin Gray. Melvin Gray is a friend of the Connect, a friend of the community, and will be taking us through the rest of this. Thank you for your time.
That's right. I'm a neighbor. I just live right around the corner there. I would have walked over, but I thought I was running late. I guess I went. Hey, thank you so much for coming out, for being a part of this. Thank you so much for gathering, right? Like, we're still in the middle of the pandemic. And it's no small thing that we're in this room together. And it's also no small thing that, we're in communities like this one, right? People are dealing with other health issues that made COVID not just an inconvenience, make it better. And so I'm appreciative that you're here, that you're covering your mouth. I want to encourage you, like cover your nose, like COVID is a droplet infection, right? That's how you get it, right? So cover your nose, cover your mouth, love one your neighbors. Let's be here for each other. Thank you for being here with us this evening. So good to be with you all. And I am grateful that you have come out and are sharing. I am a former teacher. I used to teach over a block. So I have a vested interest. One, as they used to say. Somehow I only got two syllables. But I have a vested interest in how we continue, who it is that we choose to shepherd this responsibility of educating our young people. So I'd love to start kind of my engagement of you with going back to the grades, right? Like, so one of the biggest issues of the past year has been the fact that, you know, we haven't been able to have our students in school the way we would have them, and this has been a challenge all over the country because of COVID, right? And we had to figure out how to do education well so that we could keep students well. And Rohit, thank you so much for warming us up. We asked you what grade you would give the superintendent on how she is handling COVID. And so I'd like to go back to that. And what I'd like for you to do, if you wouldn't mind, for your neighbors, I'm asking you to leave your stump speech at the door, right? Just how you critically understand what it is, what has she done well, and what would you like to see done better, right? Like, I mean, it's not necessarily a critique of her, but coming in, what are you advocating on behalf of the young people and on behalf of families relative to COVID? Please, let's start with Jason.
Good evening, everyone. I am Jason B. Allen. I'm a neighbor. I grew up here in Atlanta, graduated from Frederick Douglass High School. I am also a current teacher. I've been in education 17 years. I am a special education teacher, and we are very rare. So if you know anyone that is a special education teacher, definitely motivate them to stay in the classroom because they are needed. With that being said, I gave the superintendent a B-, and I think that's fair. Because again, as a teacher, I have a different perspective of what board members have in regards to what's actually happening in our schools and our classrooms. And I could tell you to this day, as a teacher, getting up for my classes, I've been around to the schools here in the city of Atlanta, specifically those in the area that I grew up in, which is right down the street from Washington High School, and also as a graduate of Douglass High School. And there's a need for masks in schools. I know this because I am working with grandparents who are raising school-aged children here in the city of Atlanta. So it's vitally important that we make sure that they have the resources. I've been in the classrooms. The teachers do not have air ventilators in every classroom. That's a fact. That's not anything made up. That's not anything to shame the superintendent or the board. I'm sharing this because these are the stories that we do not hear about. And so in giving the superintendent a B-, I will go further as an educator to say that the Board of Education will have an F. And here's why. My students have been asking this board since the pandemic has hit to make sure that they mandate individualized health plans. I run an organization called Atlanta. You can look it up, atlanta.org. Several board members have been on Atlanta. And my students have asked the same question over and over again. Why have we not mandated this district to ensure that every school knows what an IHP is? Who has heard of that? Ask your board members, ask your superintendent, ask your principals. What is that? Let me tell you, and then I'm going to pass the mic on. As a teacher, I lost a student in the pandemic, and we learned from that tragedy. Our schools have now mandated individualized health plans to be audited every year. These plans tell us what the severe health conditions of our students are. So when we sit in board meetings and we hear the superintendent saying that we are making strides and growth is happening, how? When the staff members cannot even tell you if a child has a severe asthma attack, what to do. We are applauding the schools finally getting nurses in almost every school in Atlanta public schools. It's unacceptable. And so that's why I would give the superintendent a B-. She is new. She came in during the pandemic, but I would hope that this Board of Education is asking her the questions of what are we really doing to ensure that our students are safe, not having milled and mold in the buildings, and Carver High School and some of the other schools that we've seen on the news. These students are a part of Atlanta. They have been talking about these things. This is nothing new. And so that's why I gave that grade.
Good evening, everyone. Jason Estevez, can y'all hear me? No? Oh, I'm sorry, but I couldn't really. Yeah, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I guess I take off a mask. Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Okay. Jason Estevez, I am the at-large seat 9 board member on the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education. I'm also chair of the board. And I know it's campaign season, so I do want to clarify some things. And that is the fact that the reason I gave the superintendent an A- is because I think Atlanta has been the exemplar in this state and in the South. But there is still a little bit of work to be done on making sure that every single one of our students is safe. We have mandated masks in every single building. We have mandated surveillance testing, the first and one of the only school districts in the state to test students and teachers each and every week. This past week alone, Atlanta Public Schools conducted over 20,000 tests of its employees and students. We are also from the beginning of the pandemic provided every single student, every single teacher with laptop and hotspot to the extent they needed a hotspot so that they can learn virtually. We've also provided every single student and their families with food each and every day of this pandemic. Again, I think there's room for improvement, but when you talk about what Atlanta Public Schools has done to keep our students and our staff safe versus any other district in this state, I will put Atlanta Public Schools at the top, including when the governor tried to pass or issued a executive order that told us not to require a mask. And nevertheless, our superintendent relented and required masks to this day. Now, where can she improve? I think there's certainly room for improvement in communication. I think speaking to a special education teacher, we can certainly improve how we teach our special education children, particularly during a pandemic, because it's very difficult to do virtually. Atlanta Public Schools has to do a better job of doing that. But I will tell you that this district has done a great job of trying to protect our students and our staff during a pandemic that has challenged every single school district in the country, where we did not receive guidance or barely assistance from the federal government or the state until earlier this year.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with all of my neighbors tonight. I know I gave a score of an 8 out of 10 because I thought we were doing numbers, but that is the equivalent in my eyes of a B+. And I'll start with some of the strengths that I found. And some have already been mentioned, providing our students with laptops, tablets, hotspots, and even having the mandate. One of the biggest things is, as you mentioned, COVID testing on the schools, as well as allowing some scholars who are at the appropriate age to get vaccinated. They have that ability to do so. But one of the areas I feel like it was an opportunity for our superintendent to really jump in and understand our community is the quality of what we gave a lot of our parents, the quality of resources, the quality of products, and the quality of communication. And what I mean by that is I worked at Sprint for several years, and a lot of times hotspots, it may work good in your house, but 2 doors down, it's not going to work. Understanding where those areas where that particular company that we were partnered with, that is not the best service. We were partnered with AT&T, Verizon, and we had several other third-party companies we had assistance with. But we had to, we understood this person lives in this area based off their spotting map. Let's not go with AT&T. Let's not go with Xfinity, because it serves no purpose to give a child a hotspot that won't give any service, that's constantly sputtering. The same thing when it comes down to tablets. it was a gripe of mine. I was so excited that my son had a tablet, but then they didn't stay charged or they got extremely hot. So those are the things that while they took a measure to improve or to give that service, it ended up being a hindrance. I appreciate the virtual opportunities that are still in place right now, but there's several areas to address when it comes down to wraparound services and how we provide better resources to our parents. And when I say that, I mean, in essence, the communication. There's so many parents who weren't aware about laptops. They weren't aware of the food drop off, and they found out later on. They said, I wish I had known that. So we have to strategize as a board and work very closely with our superintendent to make sure she is meeting the needs truly of all of our parents so that they are able to give that good service to our students.
Thank you so much. So, Jason, you raised the specter of sometimes as a board member having to deal with what can seem like hostile legislation or policy coming down from the governor's office on down to the school board, the local school board. And over the summer, we kind of saw some of that happen with our state school. You know, in this time where the new boogeyman is critical race theory, a legal framework for understanding how race has been operative in the world. So you heard me, right? A legal framework, right? So it's not something that's being taught in elementary school, but it's become the new boogeyman, right? Like over the summer. And one of the things that happened was the state school board decided it wanted to pass a resolution that said anything that smacks of this, we want to rule it out of our country. And so for those of you, I don't know how many people have been following this in the city of Atlanta, right? Like, so understand why it matters. The city of Atlanta school system is about 85% children of color. 84 children of color, right? And so with that in mind, what this policy says is, one of the things it says is, we, the State Board of Education for the state of Georgia, one, believe that the United States is not racist, and that the state of Georgia is not racist, structurally racist. Now, they want that taught in school. In other words, they want us to teach lies, right? One of the other things they put in there is that they talk about, you know, concepts that make people feel at fault or blame or tendency to feel guilty or anguish. We don't want any history that makes students feel bad about the history of Georgia. Well, I don't know what you're supposed to feel about enslavement and kidnapping. The good ain't one of them, right? But what is probably most insidious, and go read this thing, it's online for you to read, is the number of times they say the word individual. Individual. They say it 16 times in this thing. Why? What they're saying is, they say an individual bears all teachers, administrators, other employees, and students are to be treated as individuals. So understand what this sets up. What it's saying is, if anybody does anything that finally is considered racist or disenfranchising of any of these 84% children in the country, they got to be treated as an individual. It's not an indictment of the system. The system doesn't have to look at itself. We don't have to ask what our curriculum is promoting. We don't have to ask what the history has been. We just have to cut that individual loose and keep moving, so we can keep doing what we've been doing. So this is the kind of these are some of the policies that are coming down the pipeline, trying to constrain and force teachers into functioning in particular ways in the classroom, to chill teachers, to make them afraid to have any anything to say, particularly anything to say about what's happening right now in our country, and whether or not we are taking care of the needs of people or we're dismissing the needs of people who have these same needs for generations, right? So my question to you is this. What at the policy level for Atlanta? What at the budget level for Atlanta are you going to advocate in light of constraints like this? What are you going to do to push back? How are you going to protect teachers who actually continue to teach history appropriately? You went first, Jason. Jason, you go first this time.
Yeah, so we are 85% students of color, but to be consistent with the rules, and I heard it in the back, we're 73% Black in this district. And as a primarily majority Black district, we have a responsibility to our Black students. And as a school board under my leadership and myself as an individual board member, we have never been afraid to speak on issues. When they were locking up brown students in cages, we spoke up about being a welcoming school district, one that does not discriminate based on immigration status. When they were talking about banning certain students because of their LGBTQ plus status, we spoke up and started a task force. When George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor happened, we spoke up and said Black Lives Matter. We are a school board that is not afraid to take stands on issues. And when the state started talking about CRT and trying to ban, they weren't talking about, they were saying CRT, but what they actually meant was anti-bias training. What they actually meant was equity. What they actually meant was talking about Black injustice. And what Atlanta Public Schools already had in place was an equity policy that was drafted and adopted in my second year as chair, where we acknowledge systemic barriers that are rooted in racism. We acknowledge that in policy. So when you talk about what can we do, we acknowledge racism. We acknowledge the barriers that have been put in front of Black students in policy. What do we do budget-wise? Because of that policy in Atlanta Public Schools, we have something called the Student Success Formula, which distributes money instead of on a per pupil basis where every single student in the district gets the same amount. Everyone gets $12,000. That's the most school districts. In Atlanta Public Schools, we distribute based on need. So if you're a special needs student, if you're an ELL student, English language learner, if you are a student living in a low income community, if you're a student that is gifted and talented, there are weights attributed to each one of those, poverty being the primary one. And we give students more money based on that need. That's equity, which means that in a North Atlanta cluster school, the average student may get about $9,000. In this community, schools are getting $13,000, $14,000 per child. Very few school districts across this country are distributing money that way. Thank God we're in Atlanta, because in Atlanta, we can speak honestly to our community and say, some communities have more money than more resources than others. And because we want all students to succeed, we have to distribute funds based on need. And that's one of the things we implemented.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest things to talk about how we would do it. We write policy, but the thing about policy is that it's the paper, right? How many times have we had 1,000 policies that acknowledge something, but we actually have to do more than acknowledge it, but put some action behind it. When it comes down to equity, we understand that there is a major disparity within our students in our classrooms with how they're inclusive with learning. There's a disparity within our communities. And furthermore, there's a disparity when it comes down to what our teachers need for resources. So when these type of policies come down from legislations higher up than us, yes, we're going to advocate. Yes, we're going to do policies. But for me, I'm an action person. So I'm going to put actions into place so we can actually invoke that change that needs to happen. The next thing I think that we would need to address is actually defining what it needs to be and what it needs to look like for each student. And I know that sounds kind of large, like so many students in the district, how will we define that for every student? It's not as difficult as it sounds, because if we can write a policy that could address all students, we can ensure that our actions are addressing all students as well. And when we look at our budget, those are the same things that we have to tackle. It's already been mentioned that we do provide other additional resources to schools in this area that are more opposed to the next area, but we do have to understand it's still not enough. So how are we going to be able as a community, and how can we tap into our community to ensure that our students are getting enough that they need so they can continue to be successful? And these type of legislations don't have impact on our students, because it's not about making sure that everyone feels comfortable. It's about making sure that everyone has the right understanding and they have a fair opportunity to succeed once they graduate.
Awesome question. So having been a former district administrator in Atlanta Public Schools, it sounds good when we hear the word equity, but when we realistically look at what's happening in our schools, it's not adding up. And here's why. Policy development is much to what DeJarge just mentioned. It's the paper, right? We have to start asking the questions of the superintendent, what is equity looking like in each school? And that, quite frankly, is not happening, because if it was happening, we wouldn't just have recently seen on the news 100+ students at Douglas High School being sent away from the school because of not having IDs, and significant issues that connect to what's happening in the community. But I'm a former MPU chair that led the education committee because I understood the importance of our communities being connected to our schools. Atlanta Public Schools sent me to Harvard to study family and community engagement. So no, we are not getting equity right. We are not getting engagement and community right. We're not getting it right. And that is something that the board has to be intentional about improving. Now, there's one board member, and I know she's here. Areta is the youngest member on the board, and she has been the most forthright about what we need to do to engage parents and communities, because she was doing the work before she got on the board. And that's essentially important, because when we talk about equity, equity should be in every facet of the school district. In fact, it's a part of our mission. We should be doing that. I want to give one quick fact. When we look at the federal dollars that was just mentioned about what schools are receiving, here's the inequity. We make equity about race. I don't teach my students like that. Yes, I accept my Blackness. I'm all power to the people. However, I have students that come from all ethnicities, and this is what I teach them. We are more than colors. We are a human race. That's the first thing we need to think about when we talk about equity. Equity in Atlanta is too focused on racial division. And here is why. North Atlanta believes that they have equity, but the North Atlanta cluster, the Midtown cluster, the Jackson cluster, they all have foundations that are raising 140 or thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars every year, because they're doing that to do what? Fill positions that will help their students succeed. Is that equity? Because the board is charged to make sure that the property taxes, the federal dollars, and the other monies that they are budgeting for are going to student success. So equity is something that every area of this city is facing, but we don't see it because we're too encapped with looking at poverty and using that pain of our children to say, hey, here is what we're doing. And we have to stop that. In order to achieve equity, we need to really and truly get into the schools and the communities, hear what our parents, our teachers, most importantly, are saying is needed to correct the problems and get the work done.
Okay. Let me switch mics. The reason I'm switching mics is I realize we're running a little late, and I want to give us a chance for one or two questions from the audience. who has a question that you would like to ask these potential school board members?
Hi, my name is Emma Jean Davis. Closer to my mouth, is that good? I am a grandparent and I raised my granddaughter. And Atlanta Public School fails our children. I want to say that. I also want to know, you talked about an IEP. An IEP is just not for children who are in the EMR. They're for children who have disabilities. My granddaughter was diagnosed as having ADHD. I could not get an IEP program for her. I live right across the street from Kips Drive, and they have physical ed every day. I taught at that school when I was teaching school and can remember physical ed, educating the total child. Atlanta's got to do. If y'all can take a model from Kips Drive, who allows the children to have an opportunity to learn socialization. That's one of the foundations. Learning how to play on the playground with somebody, learning how to be able to chat with somebody. What are you willing to do to make that happen?
So,
Well, to answer your question, so there are two things. There's an individualized education plan, which is the IEP that serves exceptional learners. And I say exceptional learners being one, I was gifted and talented, but I also had a specific learning disability, which is why I'm very passionate about this, because we have severely failed students that are exceptional learners in Atlanta Public Schools. Individualized health plans is something completely different. That alerts the schools of the severe health conditions of our students. Last point, Strive, which is right across the street and out of our charter public schools, are not under the authorization of this board. This board is responsible for the locally operated schools according to the charter. And so what we do, having worked with the authorization for that public school, we can definitely improve in our collaboration of making sure that we're spreading the wealth of what school improvement looks like. And that's the charge that should be of this board. How are we actually improving our schools so that what other schools operate that are part of the public schools have for our students, every child in any locally operated community school that has strengthen our partnership with our charter and our public schools, our programs that they have, we can see better results in our local communities.
good people, I don't mind if anyone else speaks to it. This mic is on. I don't mind if anyone else speaks to the same question, but please try to keep your answers a little bit pointed, a little more brief if you can. What would you do?
So a couple of things. One, I want to acknowledge that you said that Atlanta Public Schools failed your grandchild, and I want to empathize with you because I don't take that lightly. I think we do have a significant issue with special education, and a special education audit showed that there are issues that we have to solve. The pandemic made things worse. So I just want to acknowledge that pain. As far as it relates to recess at physical education at Kips Drive, Jason's right that as a school system, we don't have direct oversight over the day-to-day operations of a charter school. But what we can do is we can serve as an example and have our traditional schools modeling what it should be to have good physical education. And that means not only at the middle school and high school level, but also at the elementary school level, which is what I've done as an individual board member, is help to bring partnerships to the school system, not only to ensure that every single school, elementary school, has a good playground. I'm gonna stop there. They need good playgrounds, physical education.
Thank you so much. Let's take another question in. Okay.
I can do it. Hi, I'm Ann Hillbond. I do have a child. I have children. I have children in at KIP. I have two questions, but I'm gonna try to loop it into one. One was very interesting to me in regards to the distribution of funds. That I think Jason, I don't know if y'all are going by Jason 1 or 2, but Jason in the middle, said about the distribution of funds and how it's distributed. If that, I can't do this. If that is true, if that is the way it's distributed, right? Like poverty gets the most and then everybody else gets down or goes down, then why is there such a huge difference in North and Southern schools? And then the other question to that, like my part B, is when these funds are distributed, how is it allotted for each child? That would be that question. And then and then the other
How is it
thing-
allotted each?
No, so if my child, right, my child has none of these things, right? So they're at the bottom of the totem pole. If they get $5,000 for my twins, right? So that's $10,000. How is that $10,000 being spent? What does it go to? What does APS board say this is supposed to go to, right? Because I find that very interesting as a parent to know. And then the other thing is for Jason here in the blue, just directly. With the school board population, with the student population being predominantly Black, I find it very interesting that you say you don't see color when it is clearly a color situation going on here in Atlanta with education and funding and equity. So I would like you to expand on how do you not see that?
Two questions, right? Okay, all right. First to the grandparent, I just want to say really quickly, I can empathize every day. My grandmother raised me, and I was a part of that, a new IEP thing when grandparents didn't even appreciate it or respect it. So I understand the day-to-day struggle that you experience. And I have a child now that has an IEP, and one of the biggest things is how do we get our parents back into our traditional schools to ensure that they feel like the quality of education in our public schools that we already have that are under us, that we are operating responsible for, to get your child there so you can exhibit some of the services that we offer. Because as Jason Estevez has mentioned, we don't have any control over that day-to-day operations. Now I want to make sure I answer her question. The second question I do remember, when it comes down to the allotment of the funds, that is the autonomy of the principal once that is dispersed. Now, I can't speak for KIP because, as I said, not 1,000% sure, but the principals do have that autonomy, and I know a lot of times that is a big piece. I believe your first question I remember, but if I said it wrong, you can grab me at the back and I'll try and figure it out. But what I want to say is that, as I mentioned, is that autonomy piece that I already mentioned, but the vast difference that has already been mentioned, and I believe Jason Allen mentioned it, is the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the Northside foundations are able to raise. We have to ensure that our community, in our underserving communities, poverty-stricken as they may say, have those same type of resources. My grandmother, I remember candy sales, I remember chicken dinners, I remember us getting out there, and she would call Carter bus station in Charleston, South Carolina and say, hey, my daughter's school needs some money, right? We have to get to the point where our schools that are lacking, that we can provide them additional resources, because unfortunately, $1 billion, it's a lot of money. But unfortunately, for what we're facing, it's not enough. And we also have to do a little bit of grassroots in ensuring that our daycares are more efficient. When our children are entering into kindergarten and our board is responsible for the governance of our children, that they come equipped, because we have so many children that start at that front wheel and they don't know their first name. We have so much that we have to do to backtrack. That's another piece that we don't often talk about, but it's imperative with addressing when it comes down to our schools. I'll pass it to Jason E.
So I just want to
30 seconds. If you
Yep,
can.
very quickly piggyback off that. I don't want to, yes, we have $1 billion budget, but I don't want to put that burden all on APS. The disparities in the city that exist in the city exist beyond our schools, and they are in our neighborhoods. So that's why it's imperative for us to have the mayor, hold the city council, hold the state accountable for the disparities that exist in our system. The problem with the budget is not the problem with the budget, it's the problem with our neighborhoods. We're providing many more dollars per child to the South Side, but there's so much need in the community that APS can't do this alone, which is why the partnership between the city and the school system is so vital. And just to let you know, once it gets to the school level, the money is not assigned to each individual student. It's in one bucket that the principal, in collaboration with the governance team made up of elected people from the community and the school, determine how that money is distributed. So it's not attached to any single child.
I won't
45 seconds.
I won't repeat what's already been said. We definitely can do better with budgeting. And
But
also
answer the question
partnering-
she asked
Yes,
specifically.
and
to-
also partnering with the city of Atlanta Just to be clear, I did not say that I don't see color because that would be a farce, right? Of course, we are all individuals, we see color. I said I don't teach color, I teach humanity. And it's important that we do that as teachers and educators because a lot of times we feed into the continual issues and division. And I'm very intentional about that because I have children that come from all ethnicities, right? And I know that we're in campaign season, but again, I would encourage you to go to atlanta.org on Facebook and see what my actual students from every culture and ethnicity are speaking to, what they want to see in regards to the severe racial injustice that they can acknowledge and see in our schools and also our communities. I will end on this. Equity in the city of Atlanta starts with education. It is the center of the economic and educational inequities that we have in this city. We have the data that reflects that. We see it in the community development. Anyone that is invested in the city of Atlanta has to be heavily invested in our school system. And we have an opportunity now to improve schools, to make our communities better.
Thank you so much. So this is what we're going to ask you to do. If you have any other questions that you want to ask these school board members, if you want clarification on something, if you want to follow up, if you want to make sure that I hear you right, walk up to them afterwards, talk to them, right? They'll be out here. I want to give you 30 seconds, if you'll take it, 30 seconds to just kind of make a closing statement, make your closing pitch to Westview about why Westview should support you.
Well, so
Let's start on that end.
Go ahead.
DeJaris, please.
As everyone has said, my name is DeJaris DJ James, and I am running for Atlanta Board of Education, and I need the support and want the support of Westview because of my experience that I bring to the table. I am someone that has been through so much that I understand the gripes. I was raised by my grandparents. I have a parent that went through federal incarceration. I understand the plight of the inequities of this neighborhood. And I understand as a human resource professional what it takes to get our students to the next level, because I sit at the table every single day and I fight for our children to get jobs, to get opportunities. My organizations make sure that they're prepared when they walk into a room to have a conversation. I don't sympathize with the disparities. I empathize with it because I too was that child. And it was the same community like this. It was a village that made me be able to be who I am today, to be able to stand before you to say proudly, I'm DeJaris DJ James, and I want you to support me.
DeJaris James, where can we find out more about you?
You can find out more about me at votedjaris.com. I will leave some flyers. I do have to leave to pick up my son from football, so I won't be able for conversation after, but it has my number, my email. I'm always accessible and available if you need to speak with me.
Good word. Thank you so much. Give DeJaris a hand if you would, please. Jason.
So I won't take too much time. Jason Estevez, at large seat 9. I'm gonna hand these out to everyone. My phone number's on there, my email's on there. Look forward to connecting. I just want to thank the Westview community for showing up. No other community in the city is doing it like y'all are, so I appreciate it. And I also want to thank specifically Vote ATL and Connect, because y'all put school board first.
Come on,
I can tell you, look, usually we're the ones waiting on city council, and on all the other elections, then the school board goes last, even on the ballot. So I just want to thank y'all for prioritizing what I think matters the most, which is the education of our students.
Where can they learn more about you, Jason?
I'm gonna hand it out, but
Okay.
JasonEstevez.com, at Jason Estevez on all the social media.
So give Jason a hand and then give yourselves a hand for doing it like you do it. Jason.
Jason B. Allen. I am a native here of the city of Atlanta, graduate of Douglas High School, grew up in Mosley Park, served my neighborhood planning unit there. Some of you all I have worked alongside, from city of Atlanta to working and marching in the streets for justice for so many of our constituents here in the city of Atlanta and beyond. I'm a longtime educator. I come from a family of educators and entrepreneurs here in the city of Atlanta. My sister, my partner, my other family members are teachers in the city of Atlanta right now. I'm invested in doing the work. I believe that when my car breaks down, I go to a mechanic. When I want to improve schools, I should go to an educator. We need an educator's voice on the school board who understands the work of the school board, who has done policy work, who has done community engagement, but most importantly, who understands what it takes to run a functioning 21st century classroom. And that's important to the work of school improvement that this board is charged to do. You can find out more information about me at allenforschoolboard.com, but I also would invite you to go to atlanta.org and check out some of the current work that my students across the city of Atlanta and the metro area are doing right now to uplift conversations around equity in education. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Give Jason Allen a hand, please. Good people, we are running about 20 minutes behind where we want to be at this time. So I'm going to ask you, as the board member, the board candidates leave the stage, I'm going to ask you to give us 5 minutes to get set for the city council, and then we'll be right back. We're going to take about a 5-minute intermission. Thank you. Which is us, right? Westview.
Westview split between District 4 and District 10. So this side of the street is 10, that side is 4.
That's right. And so we have the gentleman who's just speaking, Jason Hudgens. Jason's running for city council for District 10. We also posthumously have with us, or don't have with us, the candidate, the incumbent candidate running for District 10, Ms. Andrea Boone, who we just didn't get to talk. And so, you know, it is important that our community hear from the people who want to represent, right? And so take note who showed up and who didn't, right? And then we have several at-large candidates. We have Todd Gray. Todd Gray is running for Post 1 as we like. And we are glad he is here. We also have running for Post 3 at large, Sherry Williams. Thank you so much for being here. You know, and we also have running for FRC for Post 3, Joey Merriman. And there's Joey. And Gregory, I'm going to screw up your name. So say it correctly.
Rogelio
Rogelio
Arcilla.
Rogelio Arcilla is running for District 4 City Council. So please give Rogelio a hand. You know, you heard earlier we were talking about Black excellence, right? We have a city council candidate who came tonight, who we aren't even a part of his voting district. But it mattered enough that he showed up. So we want to give him some love. Elijah, please stand. We are appreciative that Elijah is here, and I'm sure he'd be appreciative that you have folk in his district. District 3, he came out for you. So, you know, there we go. So thank you so much for being here. Let's start.
Ms. Imogene wanted to make sure that I was acknowledged. Listen, bring your own name in corner.
No problem. So here's the thing, candidates. I'm gonna invite you to leave your stump speech at the door. I'm gonna invite you to leave your stump speech at the door. We heard it. We know all the flowery words. We love the good intentions. We love all that. We want you to speak to the questions that have bubbled out of our community. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you up front. Like, I'm a neighbor, and I'm listening for 3 things. The first thing I'm listening for, and I want to invite you all to listen for this too, right, is accountability. Specifically, who do you see yourself accountable to? Because in Westview, we need folks who are accountable to us, right? Not just come down here to get elected, get garner a few votes, and then go and make decisions that serve other money interests somewhere else, all right? So we're listening to hear who you feel accountable to. Secondly, I'm listening, and again, I invite you to listen to this too, about outcomes. Specifically, how do you plan to change persistently inequitable outcomes? Stuff does not work on this side of town the way it works on the other side of town. And those outcomes are generational, right? We need to know that you understand the level of resourcing that these people have today and know how many more people are going to have resourcing tomorrow, right? Outcomes, right? But it's simple. And then the last thing I'm listening for is power. Listen, we all sit around and talk about everything we don't want. I need to know how you're going to use your power. You got two powers going coming into office. You got the power to purse, and you got the power as policy maker. I'm asking, when we ask the question, we want to know, how are you planning to advocate that money be assigned? And how are you planning to advocate for policy? What policies are you planning to advocate for that will change those outcomes, right? So those are the three things I'm listening for. I invite you, if you're listening for something else, to make sure you get it up on the wall somewhere, and you get it somewhere where you make sure you hear it. And when it's time to ask questions that you don't want to ask, all right? Let's start here. We are infamous for COVID. And with COVID, a lot of people haven't been able to work. Not being able to work pretty much guarantees you're not going to have the money to pay for everything. A lot of people haven't been able to pay for housing. And we had a moratorium on evictions, but now that's not so much. And that's a problem, because we're about to see this onslaught of evictions, and people, we think we're having problems now with people catching COVID. Wait till folks don't have a place to stay and have to be warehoused in the state. This is going to be a problem. So how do you plan, and please, again, introduce yourself as you answer this question, but be pointed about it, because we got a lot of people to get to. How do you plan to keep folks in their homes? Talking about outcomes. How do you plan to keep folks in their homes and help unhoused residents find safe, secure, long-term housing? Whoever wants to go first, will go across, once someone picks to go first. Whoever wants to open it up, you can go for it.
I'll open it up. My name is Jason Hudgens. I'm former president of the Westview Community Organization, having served for 4.5 years. I'm a former chairman of Neighborhood Planning Unit T. I'm a corporate trainer by trade. And so, Melvin, when you ask the question about accountability and outcomes, that's literally what I teach from a day-to-day basis. And those are the programs that I've for a multinational company, teaching other leaders how to get that in a day-to-day operation by leveraging the team and the data before them. How we deal with this eviction crisis, and that's exactly what it is about to become. It is already a crisis. It's about to become a bigger crisis. When we look at the amount of money that was allocated, particularly from federal funds through the CARES Act, the issue was not that the money was not there. There was a backlog and an issue with red tape at the city level and the ability to get that money that was allocated to people who actually need it. There were people who were literally applying for funds who could not get the funds and could not get it because of the red tape and the amount of documentation that they had to provide through the application process. One of the ways that we should stem this eviction crisis is by working with Chief Judge Cassandra Kirk at the court system and putting in place where there is emergency representation. Number one, we as a city, we should be providing a operation for representation. So when people are evicted, they have someone that goes to court with them. There is data that says that if someone has someone that goes to court with them, there is less likely of the ability that they will end up evicted. when that is the case, if we have proper representation, they should have the ability through the court system and through the city of Atlanta to access the funds that are available and already allocated that have been that they have been locked out of because of an application process.
Thank you so much, Jason. Rahel, since
Thank you. And could you please, by the way, I'm Rogelio Arcilla and I'm running for Atlanta City Council District 4. We dip a little into Westview, but a majority of my district is over in Venetian Hills, Oakland City, Asheview Heights, Beecher Donnelly, Mechanicsville, and so on. Could you please repeat the question?
Yes, how do you plan to keep folks in their homes and to make sure that unhoused residents, folks who already don't have homes, are able to find them?
Okay, so that's a great question. Thank you. And pertaining to District 4, this is you're talking about your District 10. I'm District 4. We are the highest rented district in Atlanta. The eviction onslaught, I've already seen go down. I've canvassed thousands of doors. I see it almost every day. I saw it today multiple times. So how do we address this? We have got to provide people with the sources, such as a lot of these people lack internet. So we've got to provide them with canvassing. It's a word of mouth district of these organizations that can help you, such as a Housing Justice League that can give you pro bono lawyer to take you to court with or go to court with you to help you from eviction. We also have got to start a fund and take the red tape off, just like Jason said. I mean, Jason just nailed it on the head. And we have got to do everything we can to house the unhoused. We're long overdue. And I will tell you the truth. Just from watching Atlanta City Council and listening to their meetings for the past 2 years, they don't care about the unhoused. It's very obvious. And so with this new council, it's time we focus on the in-house and actually address the situation.
Thank you so much. Joe,
Yes.
what I want to ask of you is, right, so we already understand that there is money that has been allocated at the federal level that has come down to the states that has not been distributed.
Oh, yeah.
So let's hold that as being true. Tell us what else we might be able to get into in order to help people stay in their home.
So let me pick up. I'm Jody Meriday. I'm running for post 3 at large for Atlanta City Council. I'd like to pick up with the Housing Justice League piece that Rogelio just spoke of. I've been a mediator certified by the state of Georgia for about 6 years. And I think employing and instituting mediators in every instance of an eviction would be a critical measure to ensure that everyone has representation and voice in that process. I think it'll be far more difficult to institute the utilization of attorneys. Mediators more often than not are able to get to the conclusion, reconciliation, and a path forward better than an attorney more often than not at less cost. So I'd say mediators first. Second, I think it's critically important that we look at a 90-day safety net plan as a city. If you are unhoused, we should have a repository space wherein there are resources with private and city partners to assist you for 90 days with a safety net, be that eviction, be that foreclosure, or be that you are unsheltered. We should have a 90-day safety net instituted to ensure that people are able to access shelter. I am seeing literally, and I live in the Ben Hill community right off of Campbellton Road, the Family Dollars benches is now a place of rest and people are sleeping there. And so I look at, what functionality do I have as a president of a homeowners association to address that? I'm certainly not going to call the police because it's not a police problem. I wish I could go and give them a card wherein they could go to a place, receive wraparound services that could address most immediately what the source of their being unsheltered is, and then direct them to somewhere that they can go.
Thank you so much for that, for adding that to the discussion. Todd, we're going to go to you and then we'll come back over to you this year.
Great. And again, good evening to everyone. I'm Todd Gray, candidate for Atlanta City Council, post 1 at large. I'm going to answer this question directly because it's very important, but I will preface it with sharing. I spent 20 years in leading and developing diversity, equity, and inclusion programs for companies that are focused here in Atlanta, making sure we have equity. I built Grady Health Systems diversity program, and I stepped down as the vice chair of the City of Atlanta's Ethics Board to serve and to run for city council. And I will lead this, and what we need to do, I'm gonna break it down to 3 factors: measurement and accountability, doing what we say we're gonna do, partnership development, having partnerships in place, and education and awareness. We know before this pandemic, we had an issue with people facing potential evictions. It shouldn't just be as a result of the pandemic that doubled down on that in disproportionately in communities of color that we're looking for the best place solution, but now we're here. So what we need to do is have that advocate program and make sure we can get pro bono legal services. But I'm gonna go another step forward. When we talk about the ownership of these buildings and the landlords and the ones that own the properties, them too are in jeopardy of losing these properties. So what we need to do to prevent such an occurrence in the future is possibly look at the tax allocation from the taxes paid by the owner going into a rainy day fund that can support, God forbid, we end up in another pandemic, to provide a financial aid to the tenants that are already investing 50% of their income for their mortgage or rent, which is way too high for the median income in our area. So that's one way we need to fix it, address it, be prepared for next time. I've developed supply diversity programs. I built Grady's program from 3 to 33%. What that means is I work with African-American, women-owned, and veteran-owned businesses, and majority of that spend is in Atlanta with African-American-owned businesses, and we hire and use diverse contractors. We have those opportunities in the city. When we develop, we have great plans, but we celebrate plans instead of celebrating the Super Bowl when the community wins. So also from a measurement and accountability standpoint, when we have development, we need to make sure our culture and our communities like Westview or the Collier Heights community, where I was dedicated as a child and ordained as a deacon at Berean Church, are not left behind any communities across Atlanta. Because when we don't do what we say in including the community in our development, we create that affordability gap, and they are not able to work and grow in the communities as it develops. That creates the first issue that makes rent or mortgage 50% of the income. So that's why I'm running citywide, because I want to address the issue from every facet and not in a vacuum.
I want to come back to that question of development and bringing our neighborhoods along. So we can put a pin in that.
Hi, I'm Sherry Williams, and I'm running for Atlanta City Council, Post 3 at large. My friends encouraged me to run because I'm the person that gets things done. I already have a proven track record of getting things done with an equity lens. I think that Atlanta is the tale of two cities, and that is unacceptable. As the home of civil rights and the home of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we should be setting the trend in the nation on what to do about homelessness. It is inhumane. It is not okay for so many people or anybody to have to live under a bridge. How can we allow this to go on year after year without remedy? We are one of the richest nations, and this city has money. It needs to be allocated appropriately. If we can allocate $21 million for a bridge across Northside Drive, and $1 million of that went for lights only, can we not surely find the money to house people who are victims of a situation that they have no control over? We know best practices across this nation. We have some of the best educational institutions right here in the AU Center, at Georgia Tech, at Emory, and at Georgia State. Why are we not using computer modeling to determine how to use money that Invest Atlanta has and the Atlanta Housing Authority have to house the homeless and to forego this mortgage debacle that is about to happen to make the situation worse?
Let me ask you, is there a particular policy, a particular budget line item that you would like to see implemented around that might help address the eviction issues that we are beginning to face?
Yes. We need to have a budget line item similar to what they have in Washington, D.C. They have an actual budget line item for affordable housing. And that can be expanded here in Atlanta, the jewel of the South, of course, the city that is supposed to be too busy to hate. It's actually too busy to take care of its least of these citizens. So I would also say that the Atlanta Legal Aid, along with the Housing Justice League, need to be funded at the level where they can provide representation in addition to the ideas that my colleagues have just mentioned, because this is a complex problem. The source of the solution is not going to come from one organization. It's going to come from partnering.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So let's come back to this development issue. So we see a lot of change in our neighborhood. We call that change often gentrification, right? Gentrification, we have wealthier people, we have former suburbanites. Quite often it is racially skewed, right? Like skewed that those who are gentrifying the communities tend to be white. But not always, right? Highly educated, high wealth, Black individuals too, but quite often white. And what is happening is they're moving into legacy Black neighborhoods, buying up property on cheap, they slap property up, property taxes are going through the roof, and lots of people who have been in these neighborhoods, many of them low level, many of them legacy, right? A lot of our particular neighborhood, Westview, 85% Black. People are being displaced, being put out, can't afford it. Neighbor across the street from me, her house was passed down from her grandmother to her aunt. Somebody offered a little bit of money, and they couldn't get any money to fix the roof while she was there. But somebody offered her a little bit of money, aunt sold it out from under her. The white folk that moved in was able to get all kinds of development loans to fix up the house and get it spruced up. Same thing to the house to the left of me. Same thing happened. So this development issue is an ongoing issue. This isn't the first time we're talking about it. We would love to know what it is that you believe can be done, policy, budget, to actually start creating opportunities for black folk in this neighborhood, working class folk in this neighborhood, to be able to keep their home. Yeah. What can be done?
Yeah. I would like to take that question. And being an Atlanta native, and my mother has lived in the same home since her and my father moved in 1963. She's 82. She's on a fixed income. So what I think we need to do is we need to have a program that is set up where you cannot sell your home unless there is a certificate that you get from some organization like the United Way or the Atlanta Urban League, because that certificate will ensure that you saw the appraisal and that you had representation and you fully understand what is happening in the sale of your home. But while that certificate program is the beginning, it would also address the issue that there are nonprofits that will fix roofs, that will fix plumbing, that will upgrade electrical, but they have lines and waiting lists that are like 2 or 3 years long. So we need to give funding to legacy residents so that they can afford to stay in their homes. And also they need to be relieved of the tax burden. You know, a lot of these big box retailers coming here, like Sam's Club and Walmart, just to name a few, they don't pay taxes for 20 years, but they seem to be getting corporate welfare and they don't have the burden of taxes as the legacy residents do. So we need to protect them by giving them services and resources to stay in their home. And if they decide to sell it, they should have representation and it should be required so they won't get hoodwinked.
Thank you so much. this is what I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna ask that, this question be taken by two more people. Any two of you are welcome to take it. All right, we're gonna take two of you in the center, and then I'm gonna ask another question, the other two of you will get.
Yeah, I start because I'm feeling some kind of way about that question. I just got that tax bill for $5,000 on my parents' home. The home when they moved to the city of Atlanta that equaled the home that I was born and raised in, spent my entire life in, lost both of my parents. They transitioned. Sometimes I forget the year, 2015, 2016. And I'm thoughtful now because it's kind of the person in my family that's responsible and capable. Every year when I get that bill, and I'm a homeowner as well, I'm thinking to myself, at what point could I potentially drop the ball and a 40 to 50 year legacy be lost because of the increasing values of these homes? So I want to start with seniors first. I think at a certain age, there needs to be, particularly in the city of Atlanta for legacy neighborhoods, a moratorium on the taxes. They just should not have to continue to pay after they paid and face the burden of those taxes and done their part for such a long time. I think the second piece has to be Invest Atlanta has got to do a better job of the community-based investment that informs us that you can get a deposit and a down payment for your first home in certain neighborhoods in this city. Because intergenerationally, our children are not able to afford and buy and pick up the mantle where we drop it off. I think Atlanta Public Schools has got to do financial literacy at the age of 16. Our young people in school should be coached, tutored, and taught to own, not to rent, and understand if you can rent, you can buy twice your size. And so I think closing that gap is about an intergenerational piece, and then self-determination. Last night, when you all gave the numbers in regards to the amount of people who own versus rent, even in this neighborhood, 70% equaled others who own external to the community and 30% were renters. I want to know who owns. I want to call them to the table to be responsible for investment, to bring anchor tenants in, and to provide opportunities if you're not going to develop for the neighbors, neighborhood, and legacy residents to buy. Stop buying up all of the property and excluding us from the opportunity intergenerationally to have that same legacy of ownership. But that $5,000, anybody got some on it? No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, yes, so when it comes to this situation, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
We have got to explore a moratorium on developers. There is no accountability right now on development over where I live. We have people from Australia investing in our district, making a quick buck, an economic killing. Meanwhile, the next door neighbor who's been there 60 years is paying the economic price. And like she said, we've got to explore a moratorium on taxes. And along with that, we need community benefit agreements with those development, commercial and real estate. If you abide by it, you're good to go. If you don't, goodbye. Because this is getting just out of hand, the gentrification, uncapped development, whatever you want to say. And we've also got to explore making it illegal for people like Zillow or Blackstone, I'm not sure, to stop buying single home units or multifamily units 20, 30%, 40% over value because they know that's going to inflate and they're going to make an economic killing. Also, we have got to start figure out a formula to tax blight properties because they're just sitting there. And what is that? Where do those taxes go? The little $100 taxes, schools, education. And we just had educators up here. If we can formulate a tax to where we can measure their lot and tax them at market rate and fund our schools like they properly should be funded, and also go to a displacement fund to help people from losing their homes. Finally, I want to say, we can go on this for 30, 45 minutes. This is very I'll finish real quick. This is very intersectional. We have got to start thinking about also, this is the word of mouth district, the 4th district. We can pay the youth, and I talk about this a lot about youth employment, $15 an hour to canvass elders about programs, the homestead exemption, because they lack internet. Most of our district doesn't have internet, and tell them just on the flyer what hotlines to call to save them from losing their homes. And wait a month, canvass another 2 months, and make sure that senior knows about those programs. Thank you.
All right, so I need to change the topic if I can. I need to change the topic.
Before you change the topic, though, Melvin, it is important that we deal with the equity issue that underlines all of this. We have to realize that communities like Westview was a red line neighborhood. And when we look at the original deeds, we did a history project in this community. And when we looked at the original deeds, they were actually written so that you could not sell a house to someone who was Black. And then the banks took that and redlined the neighborhoods around that. And so even when you have legacy neighbors, like my neighbors who wanted to update their home, they actually had to sell their home because they could not put a new roof on it, because they could not get the money to put the roof on it because of redlining and the way that the bank set it up. We have to, in Westview, we created a program called This Old House Westview, where literally when code enforcement violations came down in this neighborhood, they came to Westview first. They came to my email as president, and then we worked as a community to rally around the homes, particularly of seniors first and legacy neighbors, to deal with those issues so that people could stay in their homes. The city of Atlanta has a fund where we, and using money from the housing bond, where we could and put money towards allowing legacy neighborhoods, specifically that have been traditionally redlined, those neighbors to update their homes so that they can stay in them and gain equity out of them.
So the only little bit of pushback I'm gonna give you is we don't have to. We need you to.
And I will.
Right, like we need you all to, because you're going to be in the position of making decisions. So let's talk about some of the decisions that have been made recently. One of the decisions that was made recently was a vote on Cop City. Right? A vote on Cop City, right? Setting aside property to build a new police training center and whole complex now. So this was a vote that was taken. None of you were on city council at that time, right? Right? So you don't have to defend your vote. But what I would like to ask, right? I'm gonna say that, we don't have in Westview, we don't have the best relationship, right? The city of the poor neighborhoods in Atlanta don't have, the blacker neighborhoods in Atlanta don't have the best relationship with ADD. And we don't see the answer quite often as being more money for ADD for more cops on the street, when half the problems are issues that the public safety problems aren't issues that can be solved with a gun. Right? They are issues that need social work and they need job employment and they need like these kinds of issues. So what we're asking is this: a policy exists. How do you make sure that policy, what policy response would you have to make sure that policy doesn't actually come back and bite us? What kinds of policies around policing have you been thinking about that will actually increase safety? Yes.
All right. I would take this one directly. Again, measurement and accountability, partnership development, and education and awareness within our community. I work for the Atlanta Police Department. I went through 27 weeks of the academy over 10 years ago. I understand how officers were trained to do community-based policing versus some of the tactics that we saw that were so horrific to the citizens in our city. You got good officers, you got bad officers. But let me go back and address the first question that I'm gonna talk about policy and what I believe we need to do with policing. When we talk about Cop City, as it's been termed, it was against the will of the community at large, number one. Over 1,700 voiced their opposition of this. And the environmental factors, the investment of the resource, regardless if it's only 80-some acres that's been developed for the actual facility and the rest will be preserved, all of it can be preserved. So what I would have done if I was on the council at that time is follow the will of the people. One thing I do know is that we do need a better facility. But why can't we take a look at the assets that the city owns that would not cause another tree to be cut down, that would not cause as much of an environmental concern, and can give the capacity for something we need: more officers on the street, well-trained officers on the street, and also better response times to 911 and all of the ecosystem to address the crime issue we're having. Second to that, I never agree with defunding the police. I believe in reimagining policing. And we need to implement a community-based policing model with metrics. We should not use the metrics and data that we have to find simple ways to citation our citizens and to catch them in petty crime. We should use that data also to avoid and be proactive and mitigate crime. The pre-arrest diversion program, we need to get serious about it. It's great, it exists, but your priorities are in the budget. So it needs to be funded in a way so that we can give a bridge to those who may have made a mistake and just need a real rehabilitation. We also must deal with crime in a three-pronged factor. Those that want to be career criminals and want to commit crime, they need to pay with their time and not have an easy access immediately back out on the streets. Number two, we need to deal with mental health and homelessness when it results in petty crime with empathy and a path to rehabilitation. And we must meet that situation with resources versus threat level or treat it as a criminal instance. We have to make that happen. When the police come into our communities in Westview or any community around the city of Atlanta, the kids should not run from the officers first. They should run towards the officer because the relationship is built. But there's a trust issue that doesn't exist between our communities and law enforcement. So what we need to do on that education and awareness pillar, the Citizens Review Board, we need to educate our citizens that you do have a voice back and you must use that. And we must be proactive when we feel wronged in the factor of policing. We must also use our data from the crimes and the things that happen across Atlanta, not to say based on how many arrests or citations you write, you get the best off days or you get that service award. But let's talk about awarding those who mitigate crime in a less aggressive manner and truly rehabilitate our citizens. So we got to reimagine. And those are things we need to implement.
I appreciate that. And I'm actually aware of our time and aware that we haven't given the audience a chance. What I'm going to ask you is this. We're going to ask for 2 questions from the audience. And what I'm going to ask you of you all is that you keep your answers, I know so. Keep it at 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Very pointed to the question. We're gonna have 2 of you answer, 2 or 3 of you answer one question, 2 of you answer the last one, and then I'm gonna get the turn to close out. Will you stick with us? Thank you. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear us talking about the inequality in Atlanta, how it goes back generations, redlining, and all that. Recently, a few weeks ago, the city of Louisville, they passed a resolution in support of reparations, including direct payment to the descendants of slavery to the Congress at a federal level. Now, we do want you to do everything you can, but if African Americans, Black Americans had reparations, that would help out, tremendously. If you were in office as city council, would you introduce a resolution in support for reparations for the Black American descendants of slavery?
The answer is absolutely yes. Number one is a city that has had Black leadership for over 40 years. Atlanta should have led on that issue. I'm a native, Louisville's my hometown. I actually know Jacory, who introduced that resolution. We should have led on that issue because when we talk about direct investment, when we talk about equity and issues around equity, we have to talk about dealing back to direct investment into the communities that were kneecapped literally from the beginning. The issue I have with my opponent, who is not here, who doesn't show up to policy conversations, she shows up to photo ops, but not policy conversations, is that as the daughter of a civil rights icon, she should have led on the council on this issue. I would 100% introduce that resolution. I've actually already signed on to the ADOS pledge saying that I would do so in the first 100 days of me being in office.
We appreciate that, Jason. Anyone else want to speak to it? Yes.
Yes, the income inequality is ridiculous. And if you watch a clip on YouTube, it gets even more ridiculous. I actually just introduced a policy yesterday called the District 4 dividend, in which we give $1,000 to 250 residents. The whole policy is on my website, or you go to my Facebook. So we do need to close that gap, and thank you for asking that, addressing that. And I did go towards Mariah Parker, who was the first one to introduce reparations in Atlanta, or no, sorry, in Georgia. And I turned to her for a little help.
One quick question, a follow-up. $1,000 a month or $1,000 one time?
$1,000 a month to 250 residents for 1 year. And it's a pilot program, and we go and see how it changes their life.
So we're talking about, that's a guaranteed income. You want to learn more about that? Look online about guaranteed income.
It's like a UBI, but it's geared more towards the Black community.
Thank you so much. Next question.
Hey there. So my question is, I hear so many great ideas that you all have. I would like to know, what do you plan on doing when you get to the table and your ideas are rejected? How do you plan to rectify that? And then my part two is, you're out here canvassing now and you're actually a part of the community and the neighborhood. When you go to the table and your ideas are rejected, the ideas that you have proposed to us, when those ideas are rejected, how do you plan on staying connected with the neighborhood so that we know an update, we have an update, we know that my council member presented this, it was denied, and she's gonna go back and she's gonna do X, Y, and Z.
I love it, I love it, I love it. So no, the three that did not answer, so we're gonna start here with Sherry, we're gonna go over and, yes.
Okay, I'm Sherry Williams, and I want you to know that I'm already in the community. I work with all 25 NPUs. I work with MARTA. I work with GDOT. I work with the Atlanta City Council. So when I have an idea, like funding the sidewalks that Hamilton Road waited for 40 years, that I got funded in 2.5 years, the traffic signal on Fairburn Road, the near Cascade, that they have been waiting for 10 to 12 years, that I got to them in 21 months, I'm already at the table. And I know how to work around people who do not want to work with me, so that we can improve the quality of life for residents as it needs to be. So I'm already there, and I will continue to be there working with the community.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Jody, what do you do when they reject your idea? Come on.
I've been thinking about that, because when you look at the demographics and anticipate what the city is going to look like politically come January 1, I think we are going to see a very transformative trajectory. And I think that there is going to be a lot of discord on the basis of that, particularly ideologically, my views in particular, in regards to just accountability. Serving as ombudsman to Atlanta Public Schools, I learned firsthand in 1,600 incidents that there are three sides to the story. And if you do not have the capacity to build consensus, if you don't have in your toolbox the ability to listen to what everyone has said and quickly and with resolution, tell them everything that they agree about and try to dismantle the discord to advance an objective, you can get lost in the sauce. So I would say consensus building, number one, indomitability, number two, remaining community focused and engaged as an at-large candidate, number three.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for that clock. How do you stay connected to the community through the process?
This is how we do it and how I've done it before and why experience matters. So first and foremost, I will partner with all of my colleagues, the district council members, and also the at-large council members to make sure the voice of the community gets through. We also need to make sure we empower our neighborhood associations and give re-envisioned strength to our NPU models to invite in those from the community who have never been engaged, to make sure it's a voice for all and put tougher teeth. And then I would do what I've always done in this city. For 20 years, I have led supplier diversity programs, but I'm going to talk about the Grady piece. I have fought and represented. I serve on the board of the Atlanta Business League. Against the grain, I was vice chair of the City of Atlanta's ethics board. So I would do everything I've done throughout my 20-year career in fighting for our citizens, and I will represent every day and build consensus amongst my colleagues on council to get it done.
So we appreciate that. We know that it's an inconvenience to try to get it all down just a little bit. I'm going to let you close, but I need to say this much too, right? Like we got questions here. Right, like I'm gonna ask you a quick question. This is not still answer. Would you link a minimum living wage to the business contracts that are doled out while you're on city council? Would you do that? Raise your hand. All right.
Absolutely.
So like we have questions about how you will change outcomes around the economy. We have questions about how you change outcomes around policing. You know, I want to say the names of Rashard Brooks and Jimmy Atkinson and Oscar Kane. And
Rest in power. Rest in
people,
power.
People who have lost their lives at the hands of our law enforcement, who did not have. We had a woman who got kicked in the face the other day while she was on the ground in handcuffs. We had babies snatched out of their cars through the window during protests downtown last year. We have questions about that. We need you to do things about that, right? And then we have questions around voting. Next year, you know, we see things happening so that voting can be interfered with. We need to know what you're going to do relative to protect the votes of our people, what policy, what money you will assign for what, so that our votes get protected. Yes, we have an election board, but you all pay for the centers, the places that people, the polling spaces. You all pay for a lot of apparatus around that, and we help protect us. So I'm raising those as questions that you might be asked about afterwards, right? Give your last 30-second pitch for why we should support you. We're gonna go Jason, then
Rogelio.
No, not Rogelio. Jody. We're gonna go Jason, Jody. We're gonna start at Todd, come to Rogelio, and then stop this year. Go.
My name is Jason Hudgens. I want to be a proactive leader on the council. We deal with too many issues in the city of Atlanta once they hit crisis level. The truth is, if we would deal with them on a day-to-day basis at the base level of what creates the problems in the first place, then we would have better solutions. If we want better solutions, we have to choose better leadership. We have to stop choosing leaders that choose photo ops over policy conversations. I want to be the same type of leader I was for Westview. You guys saw it firsthand of what it looks like. I will be the same leader on council.
Thank you so much, Jason. Jody.
I'm grateful for this opportunity and happy to be here in the SWATs. I love this neighborhood. I love Atlanta. I've been dedicated, committed, and immersed. A lot was poured into me. It is my intention to give it all back through public service. On Atlanta City Council, I'm qualified, capable, trustworthy. I have integrity. Born at Southwest Atlanta Hospital, graduate of Douglas High School, product of Heritage Institutions, Hampton University, possessing a doctorate in African American Studies, and I want it all seated at City Council to benefit you.
Thank you so much, Billy.
I'm an Atlanta native and I have been employed and unemployed in the city. I have fallen on the front end of implementing diversity programs. When I built Grady Diversity Program, not only do we do more spend with African-American businesses, but we changed who pay with their time versus their resources in their most dire need in the emergency room. I was on the ethics board appointed by the Atlanta Business League, part of the National Business League, to represent African-American business interests, to get corruption out of City Hall so your tax dollars come back to you. I've stood on my own 2 feet and I'm running for this post one at large because I will deliver service day one based on experience. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rogelio Arcilla and I'm running for Atlanta City Council District 4. And the reason you should vote for me is the District 4, about a quarter to a third of it lives in poverty, and this gentrification is making it worse. If you're born in Atlanta, there's a 96% chance you don't escape poverty. And with that, I'm going to address poverty, whether it's policy or through the power of the office and working with other organizations. We are long overdue of taking people out of generational poverty. And I want to say a big thank you to my mother who raised me in poverty, at Bolton and Bankhead, using all the resources that she could fight for with a mixed status. So I should not be here, but I'm here.
I'm Sherry B. Williams, and I'm an Atlanta native also. You can get information about me at sherry4atlanta.com. I am the only candidate of all the city council candidates who is a graduate of the Atlanta Citizens Police Academy and the Atlanta Citizens Fire Academy, and I served 7 years on the Atlanta Citizens Review Board. I am already entrenched and getting funding for quality of life programs for our citizens. I've already funded fully the MARTA Greenbrier Hamilton Road leg. I have already had MARTA to redesign the bus rapid transit system for Summerhill. I'm already keeping everybody accountable. So thank you for this event. And do know sherry4atlanta.com. I'm the person that people call when they want things done. Thank you.
Feel free to follow up with them afterwards. Thank you for coming. Just 1 moment. We will have announcements.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much. Give me that. All right, because we came out here. Thank you all so much. So a couple of things. We've heard all the information. I encourage you all to go to the Vote ATO website, go to the Center for Civic Innovation. All of these facts and data is there. So if we have additional questions, if we feel like there's some things we need to kind of fact check, we will have all that information right there on that website. We have file operating meeting. Al has been taking notes and fact checking the whole time. If there are additional questions, we know we will not get a chance to ask all of those. We encourage you before you leave, write that question or that comment on that sticky note. That's part of our accountability. We're going to have for all these amazing people that have been here. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for allowing us to bring candidates here into our community conversation. From my understanding, Rohit, Kyle, Metra, Grace, this was the only forum that happened in Westview, right? We asked a lot of folks, a lot of emails, invitations sent out. The people that you see here are the ones that actually accepted. There is a voter guide that we worked really, really hard to put on that Vote ATO website. I highly encourage you guys to go there and take a look at that. There are lots of restorative statements and facts and data and information that is there that really helps you make educated choices about what it is that you're voting for. Even if you are not voting, I still encourage you to be actively involved. Let us know what your needs are so we can advocate. And so I just want to say thank you. We're going to slowly turn the lights on. I'm going to say you ain't got to leave. You ain't got to go home. All right, so that's what I'll say. I say thank you guys so much.